Welcome to Under the Hood, your fortnightly insight and recap into accounting's leading topics and practical insights. Brought to you by Accountants Daily.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Under the Hood, brought to you by Accountants Daily. My name is Emma.Partis, and today we've got a very special episode because we are saying farewell to Imogen Wilson, the amazing host and driving force of this podcast. Now, as some of you may already know, Immy is wrapping up with us very soon. So today I wanted to take the opportunity to reflect a little bit about what it's been like to grow this podcast from the ground up, what she's learned reporting on the accounting industry over the past 2 years, and all the exciting things she has in store up next. Imogen, thanks for joining me for one last podcast episode. How are you feeling in your last couple of days?
Emma, that was so lovely. Thank you. I feel so cool to be on this side of the microphone today. A little bit nervous to be the guest, but no, I'm in my second last day today. So when everyone hears this, I will unfortunately be gone, but it has been an amazing experience, an amazing journey. So all the feels, feeling sad, feeling excited for what's next. And yeah, just looking forward to the future and just, obviously wrapping up and going, oh my goodness, thank God I never have to talk about D296 ever again. Woohoo!
Amen to that.
Amen.
It's honestly come up so quickly, and we're obviously going to miss you so much around the office, and I'm sure the listeners will miss you a lot too. There's been an absolute flood of farewell messages over the past few days, which I think is really testament to how your work has resonated with people. But by the time this episode comes out, you're probably going to be somewhere on the other side of the country in the middle of the desert. Can you spill the tea on what you're up to next?
Yes. So it is very interesting. So a lot of people I've met, and probably not a lot of people who listen to this podcast know, before I was here at Accountants Daily on the podcast, I was with Channel 7 as a broadcast journalist. So I've come from a TV background, TV and radio. And so I am just going to head back to those roots. I obviously am going to start at the bottom because you can't just kind of get your way in there straight away. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of print journalism, a little bit of radio reporting in Western Australia, my home state, and I'm going to be regional and rural. So I'm getting that really raw community experience, which will be really interesting. And, getting back into current affairs journalism, which will definitely be a change of pace. So that is where I am going. I am going to the outback, but I still am going to be on the ocean. So I'm going to be in the Midwest of Western Australia, red dirt, a Akubra, crystal clear ocean. It's going to be a massive change from Sydney life, but I'm ready for it.
Sounds awesome. Sounds like a big change of pace, but also very, very exciting. Hopefully you'll get some surfing in as well. But for the listeners, I thought today would be a great opportunity to reflect with Imogen, celebrate some of the wins, and talk about all of the interesting and surprising things that she's seen reporting on the accounting industry in Sydney on the East Coast. But before we get into it, Imogen, you already know what I'm about to ask you, and you've touched on this a little bit. But could you give us a little bit of an insight into who you are, your career, and how you got to where you are today?
Of course. Well, my name is Imogen Wilson. And I am a journalist. I'm originally a broadcast journalist turned accounting journalist and podcaster, and turning back into a broadcast journalist. I'm from Western Australia. I'm from Margaret River. So I grew up surfing with my family, living on the beach. It was an amazing place to grow up if anyone is familiar with Margaret River and the Margaret River region. Very isolating though, so I obviously went to school there, primary school and high school, and then I moved out of home very quickly. I've always known that I wanted to be a journalist, so I went to uni straight out of high school. I was 17 at the time, moved out of home, moved up to Perth, went to Curtin University and studied my bachelor's in journalism, and also I did my short little master's course in broadcast journalism, which was great. On the side of that, and then I did a bit of work with Nova, did a bit of work with Seven. I created my own podcast on grief, a little short series, and that kind of started my love for podcasting, because podcasts weren't really big when I started studying. It was kind of a COVID thing, I think. And then suddenly every man and his dog and every gal and her girlfriend had a podcast about all different things. And it really, really blew up, and I never saw myself being in the podcast space. However, I'm so grateful that I ended up here. I kind of just created one to, I don't know, fit in with the rest of the crowd and be like, oh yeah, this will be a great little project. I'm going to create a podcast, but I'm going to do it on something completely different. So I sat down with someone who had a family member pass away, and they were really inspired to live life. And I think that was a really interesting point. It's like, you know, we're talking about grief and we're talking about the negative impacts of grief because, you know, you go through all these different cycles. You feel upset, you feel depressed, you feel so out of touch with your own life. And then a lot of people have a turning point where they go, okay, this is enough. I'm going to turn my life around and I'm going to live life because this life is precious and this life is short. So this podcast I produced was, and it's a terrible podcast, I might add. It's terrible. But it was about the positive impacts of the negative impacts of grief. So how grief and its negativity can positively influence your life. And anyway, from there, I kind of just went into Seven and radio. I love reading the news. I love getting in front of the camera and saying, you know, Susan, there's a boy in the tree. He's distressed. We have nothing more to tell you at this point, but we will update you when we find out, you know, back to you in the studio. Not that you ever say back to you in the studio. You don't say that. That's a big
Really?
No. That's a big no.
Like a misconception?
You just say, thanks, Emma. Thanks, Emma. But then I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so sick of, you know, working and so sick of writing and so sick of talking. I want to go to Mexico and drink tequila on the beach. And I want to do it in a backpack and a pair of shorts, and I never want to see anyone ever again. So my best friend and I, we quit our jobs, worked little retail and, you know, bar jobs to get some quick money, and we set off on a backpacking trip through Central and South America, which was amazing. We got 4 months in and we all both looked at each other and thought, oh my God.
Can we just
I'm bored. No,
really?
Yeah, we were bored.
Wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was the best thing ever, of course. And looking back, I wish I did stay on. But this job came up. I was brought on as a podcast host, so thank you to that little grief podcast, which is terrible, I might add. Again.
What's the name? Just in case the listeners.
I just want to reiterate, it's a terrible podcast. But yes, that's how I came onto Accountants Daily, because they were looking for someone to take on the podcast. And I thought, bingo, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to throw myself into. And into obviously a very niche and colourful space of accounting. And I didn't think that at the start. I thought, oh my goodness, I've got myself into the most boring job ever, talking about the most boring people ever. And to my surprise, it has been the most fun job ever, talking about the most colourful, vibrant and happy people. So, and that's where it's led me today.
Awesome. Yeah, I was going to say, like, we do hear a lot from industry, and I guess from our prior preconceptions that the accounting profession does have certain perceptions attached to it. So yeah, I was going to ask you, like, have you found that your perspective on the industry has changed over the past 2 years, and what has surprised you the most about it?
Definitely. I think the industry, now that I'm in it and I am talking to people in it, it's a lot more exciting and there's a lot more personality than what obviously the stereotype and stigma is. And a lot of people talk about this. We know this. You're not number crunchers. You're not bean counters. You know, you're colourful people that help other people, you know, grow their profits and their revenue and their businesses. And you're so integral to so many things. And I think that's the biggest thing I've learned, is that this industry is huge, and we wouldn't be an economy, we wouldn't be a society, we wouldn't be a community without our accountants. And when I try and tell other people this that aren't, you know, in this space, they're like, yeah, okay. I'm like, no, I promise, it's really cool.
Being serious.
It's really cool.
True.
I know. And I've met a lot of people, and they have amazing personalities. People love to chat. People love to share knowledge and support one another. And I think that is the most beautiful thing I have discovered in this space, is that there are really supportive people that just want to do good for themselves, for their families, for their clients, for the, you know, greater good. It's just beautiful. And so I think I'm leaving this space with an appreciation for, one, how hard everyone works, two, how rough it is being an accountant and how hard it can be with the change that they're getting, with the non-change they're getting with, tax reform and the government. And I think that's a really tough and sticky point. And three, just people who are so dedicated and really are passionate and love what they do.
Yeah, huge. I mean, I think the people, make up such an interesting part of this industry. And you've had a lot of interesting and fun guests here on the pod. I wanted to ask, could you give us a little insight onto how you actually pick your guests and what makes you look at somebody and think, I am having you on the podcast?
That's a really good question. And I do get a lot of people messaging me saying, I'd love to be on your podcast. I'm like, oh, well, that's not actually how it works. But no, to be honest, there are so many people out there and so many great people doing amazing things in the accounting profession. And it is really hard to pick guests. But I pick a guest on the vibe that they give off. So you'll probably notice if you've been listening or tuning into the podcast, I do pick people who are very open in sharing their views. And obviously as a journalist, you'd think I would love that because I want to create stories and, write about it. But what it is with a podcast, it is a natural flowing conversation. So you need someone who is open to sharing, one, their knowledge, openly talking to you and being open to being reciprocal with you as well. And three, also just people that are down to have a little bit of fun as well, because I think it can be such a serious technical profession, and that obviously definitely has its space and it's really important. But for something like this, to make the accounting profession attractive to other people that are looking in from the outside, you need to show your personality, you need to show the fun part, and you need to show that you can work really hard and do really technical things, but you can also still just be a really fun, happy, vibrant person. And so there are so many people like that in this industry, and that is how I've picked them. Also, if you're doing a fun little side quest that's really interesting, then that's how I also get people on the podcast. And I'll send a little message saying, I would love to have you on. Please come into the studio or let's hop onto a Zoom. And also I pick, if we're doing, because you will probably notice as well, I do have like really fun ones that are kind of a bit more thought leadership based. But then I also do try and weave in quite a lot of technical topics in there too. And with those, they're pretty much stuff that is either relevant or valid or people are talking about or having issues with in the industry. And I will find the best person or the best specialist to talk about that and break it down in a way that is easy to understand, easy to consume, and obviously captures it in the accurate way.
Yeah, it's always such a tough balance to strike, I think. All this technical, tax knowledge that we're covering all the time, but also like showcasing all the personality of the different practitioners and all the fun stuff that happens, and a lot of interesting work being done in the space. And okay, I'm sure the audience is dying to know the answer to this question, but did you have a favorite guest that you've had on the pod?
Oh, I don't pick favorites. I've had some great guests on the pod. But if I was to say a favorite, and he's probably listening to this as well, he's probably going, yes. But if you guys are all familiar, we had Eddie Senator in the studio, and he is such a smart guy, such a cool guy, and just has some real street cred, especially in the insolvency space. And so he created a bit of a white paper. He pitched that to me actually, and he said, I think there's a lot in this advisory space we need to look into. And so what actually got me about Eddie was that he pitched to me, he called me, and he said pretty much like, I love your podcast, would love to talk about this, but all good if not. This is just letting you know this is what I've been doing. And then I did a little bit of stalking, did a little bit of research, and I thought, oh yeah, I'll get this guy on the podcast. And Eddie is the nicest guy ever, always wants to help people, is always available to talk through technical topics with me or provide commentary. And anyway, I invited him into the studio. He drove from Canberra all the way here just for a recording, which was nice. And he was looking very dapper in a suit. And we got into this studio, and if anyone can see this video, it's a very dark room with lots of lights, and it's a blacked out room. And anyway, he walks in his suit, and we sit down across from one another, and he just pulls out of his blazer a pair of sunglasses, and he puts them on. As soon as we walked into this dark room, he puts on this pair of sunglasses, and I thought, yep, this is my guy. He's looking the part for this podcast. And they're not just any sunglasses. If you guys have seen the footage of it, they are the grooviest sunglasses ever.
You just kept them on the whole episode.
Yeah, just this silver fox sitting in the studio in his suit talking about advisory. He got his sunglasses on in the dark room. And I thought, okay, this guy, he knows who he is. He's super cool.
Safety first.
Safety first. And do you know what? It was a really controversial podcast too. And only controversial in the sense that, and like a lot of topics in this space, lots of people agree, lots of people disagree. So that's what I also love as well, having a little bit of a contentious
always
point.
Fun having people who are happy to speak out on their opinions and back it.
I
and,
love that.
Not be timid about. It's always
absolutely
always fun to grapple with those topics a little bit.
Yeah. So anyone, if any topics out there with Emma, if you want to be the favorite podcast guest,
bring us the spice.
Bring us the spice, but also put on a pair of sunglasses in a dark room, and then you'll think, okay.
We're having you back on the podcast, actually.
Okay. Suddenly you look way cooler than me, and
I feel intimidated.
I love it. Yeah. I don't know. I should have worn my sunglasses today, seriously.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like the send off. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Where are mine?
Yeah.
Now, I want you to take me a little bit back in time, back to 2024. And, this podcast has hugely been a product of your vision, your efforts. But I wanted to ask, when you were first getting started with it, what was the vision, and I guess what did you want to deliver to your listeners?
Yeah, I think that's also a really interesting question, because we did have a podcast that obviously I've been hosting as well, and that's the Accountants Daily Insider. And I think when I entered this space, they said, oh, we need a podcast host, or we need someone to come in and do this role. And I started this job, and I found out I was reporting for the accounting industry, and I did have that stigma. I thought, oh my God, how boring. And how am I going to talk about this on a podcast and make it interesting for people who are really smart and for people who know all of this knowledge? And I'm not an accountant, and I say that on every podcast. I am not an accountant. I'm just here to be a mouthpiece for all of the accountants. And so I wanted to do it in a way where people wanted to listen, and that people were open to me not being an accountant, but people were open to me learning and doing it in a way that was fun and refreshing and breaking that boring or stale stigma. And I wanted to be that person that did that, so then I could highlight the accountants and all the fantastic people in this industry who have the same personality and love to chat and love to be too much, say, or, just love to laugh and talk about things that aren't that serious, but also really breaking down some topics in a way that is easy to digest. And so that's why I started Under the Hood. And we called it Under the Hood because it was about breaking that boring stigma and creating a podcast that had a host that was a little bit eccentric and a little bit random, who didn't really know what they were talking about, but was always happy to just bring the vibes. And I think that's always been my ethos with this, is just be happy and bring some vibrant personality to a topic that can sometimes be a little bit depressing in terms of it not going anywhere, and people not listening to this group of people with what they need. So that's how we started this podcast, and then it's kind of just grown from there. And it's weekly, so we could release it more, but we like to release it weekly because it gives people time to listen, and it gives time for people that are on the podcast to share their story and to have that time for people to listen to their story. And I think that's really important.
Huge. Yeah, I think that's such a central part of being a journalist, is sort of being like a bit of an outsider into what you're reporting on, and like being okay with sort of asking the silly questions and like having someone really break down what these complex issues are. So I think, it's a really awesome experience, I guess.
Yeah, it is. And do you know what? I started, and this podcast isn't about me. And even though this podcast is being posted by me and hosted by me, and, you would probably recognize my name with the podcast, this podcast isn't about me. It's about this amazing profession and the amazing people within it. And I just wanted to create a safe, fun, happy place where they felt that they could come and share their story and share their knowledge.
That's so awesome. I think it's really resonated because, like, as we've seen with all the appreciative messages of people being like, thank you for highlighting the industry and like for what it truly is and not just like the outside stereotype. So yeah, it's been really,
and don't
really
get me
heartening
wrong,
to
I also
see.
get a lot of hate mail. I have a lot of haters out there. Yeah. Obviously, you do have that as well being a journalist and probably just being an accountant too. And the world of social media these days is you have people that really appreciate what you do and then you have people that really don't appreciate what you do.
Do you have a favorite hate comment that you've gotten?
Oh, yes. I think my favorite hate comment that I've gotten is for anyone that does listen into the podcast regularly, we of course have Brent Saleh on from Leaders in Business once a month to talk about, strategic advisory and how accountants can build their skills in that. And I thought, okay, let's start our first episode with a big bang. Let's just make it fun. Let's reflect our personalities because if you know Brent, he's super fun and doesn't take life too seriously but is really good at what he does. And I said, let's call it, and we need to beep this out, let's call it What the is Strategic Advisory. And anyway, so we called the podcast that. I named it What the is Strategic Advisory. And when that podcast performed so well and got so many great comments and engagement, which was the idea. But of course, there are some older people in this profession who probably don't get my personality or maybe aren't on LinkedIn and can see like what we were trying to do with that. And my favorite comment was, "What the actual hell, sack her."
Oh my God. They were shocking the industry.
What the actual hell? And I think it was, what the actual hell, this is so inappropriate, sack her. And I just thought, job done.
Perfect.
I have mission accomplished, guys. I've hit you right where it hurts. What the is strategic advisory? So they said, yep. What
Seriously,
the hell? What the hell is this?
Someone
Too
please
inappropriate. Sack her. So
That's awesome.
I
That
might
is
get that on a
so
t-shirt,
funny.
actually. Yeah.
Just please, someone sack the sub
Sack
editor,
her.
like get her, like how'd this get through? Always, I mean, I think it's, who doesn't love a little controversy? Sometimes you got to get people talking about things and like, get these conversations going. And we do have a bit of a love-hate relationship with LinkedIn. Like we have, a lot of our great scoops come from LinkedIn. People are posting on there all the time, but we also, have a bit of LinkedIn drama occasionally. But I wanted to ask, what has been your favorite LinkedIn scoop that you've gotten?
Oh, shout out to Anthony Tripolino, a great contact, a little great friend of mine that I've made through this industry. He posted a photo of this letter one of his clients got. And you guys, if you read Accountants Daily often, you probably will know it was ATO's disastrous rental letters. And what happened was the ATO issued these letters to people with investment properties or rental properties and pretty much said you haven't filled out your tax return properly with your property. And then they gave the address of this property. And a lot of people were opening these letters and they didn't own any of the properties that the ATO was saying you didn't claim on your tax return or you didn't, give the right information for. Therefore, we're going to fine you and there's going to be penalties and there's going to be action. And so people were looking at these letters of the ATO threatening action on them and they didn't own any of the properties on this piece of paper. So obviously it was a little bit of an accident by the ATO. It wasn't obviously meant to happen like that. But that was a fantastic little scoop from LinkedIn that I picked up. Contacted Anthony. I said, what's going on? What can you tell me? What's this letter? And he was pretty much like, yeah, like some of my clients have received this and other people were engaging, being like, I've also had clients receive these letters that aren't correct. And, ATO needs to be better. That's not good enough. How dare they, scare people like that? And obviously I contacted the ATO too and said, what do you have to say about this? So it was a great scoop that I got a great headline out of that really reflected something that was totally messed up and really scared a lot of people and actually got a lot of accountants engaged as well, and that also led to, the tax ombudsman adding that into her reviews that she does. So that was a really, really great action, and it was the most read story on Accountants Daily for 2025.
Woo! Let's go.
Yeah.
Display the LinkedIn. We
Thanks,
love
Anthony
it.
Tripolino. We love you.
Shout out. Yeah, I think those stories like are always so rewarding to do because like in your case it led to like actual change,
Yeah.
like scrutiny on that issue. And I guess for the accountants themselves, it sort of gives this sense of, oh, I'm not the only one facing this issue. It's sort of like being faced for a few different people and there's something being done about it. So I think, yeah, it's so, awesome to be able to cover those sorts of issues and bring that to light. So love it. And I guess back to the LinkedIn drama. Do you have any favorite, I guess, dramas that's happened on the platform, if we want to get a bit controversial?
A little bit controversial. No, do you know what? There's none of my favorite controversies on there. I do obviously like Accountants Daily has its own LinkedIn profile, and sometimes obviously because we're a trade media publication, there's sponsored content on there, there's my content on there, there's your content on there. And like I said before, there's a lot of people in this industry who there's certain issues, but there's a lot of people that agree and then a lot of people that disagree. And so if we're talking about someone's point of view on one issue, obviously you're going to get commenters say, I don't agree with that issue and I hate Accountants Daily for always doing this or doing this. And you know what? It's one of those things where it's like, one, it's really good to get criticism because then it, creates better journalists and creates more balanced reporting. But two, it's also one of those things where it's like, I know that you disagree. I'm not saying that this person is correct. This isn't my point of view. I'm just platforming this person's point of view because they've spoken out about it. If you want to speak out about it, go for it and we can platform you. That's what balanced reporting is. That's what we're here to do. So that can be really hard. And I know also a lot of people have told me at events and stuff, they're like, oh, we just hate Accountants Daily kind of thing. I'm like,
People have said that to your face?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God, so much. Like, we hate Accountants Daily or, there's too much commercial content on there or, how do we know if anything's sponsored or don't talk about this because, that's not actually changing or it's really redundant and things like that. And do you know what? Awesome feedback. Thank you. Two, also, it's like, okay, I now have a new direction. I know what some people don't like, but also on the other hand, some people do like it. So it's just that balance. You can't please everyone. And I think that is something I've really battled with because I stepped into this role and I wanted to be someone who platformed these people and their voices and really struggling with, even though, I could be doing that, I could always be doing it better or I could also be platforming other people's voices too. So it's one of those things where you're constantly battling as a journalist to be like, am I doing my job well? Am I doing my job properly? And is this something that's always going to be there? You're going to have, people who are really reciprocating what you're doing and other people that are really against it. So I think that's just one of those things. And that also comes through on LinkedIn because we obviously see everything. So if people are talking about Accountants Daily because obviously we work for Accountants Daily and Accounting Times. I always forget about Accounting Times. We love you, Accounting Times. We do work
Shout
for
out
that.
to Accounting Times.
Yeah, we are also Accounting Times. But we see everyone's conversations being like, oh, I hate AD or AD again, FAD.
About advisory. What are you guys on about?
We hate advisory, all that sort of stuff. And it's one of those things where it's just like we've got to platform everyone. We try to. And it's one of those things like we will continue to be better and we will continue to strive to, be a place where people can share their perspectives and their stories and their opinions. So I think it's one of those things. Journalism is always a work in progress. AD will always be a work in progress. And I think that's probably the controversy that you see on LinkedIn is like just seeing people be negative about it when you've spent, maybe 10 hours on an article and you're like, oh my God, I throw my entire life into this brand and it's not landing the way I want it to land. It's just learning to deal with that disappointment and then being like, cool, how can I make myself better for these people that I'm trying to be good for, Because again, it's not about us. It's about them. It's about accountants. So we just need to, always be versatile, adapt to what people want to see, want to hear, and the people that they want to hear from.
Yeah, it's huge. I think, as a journalist, like you always are getting these like lessons in resilience and sort of like getting you, like sometimes you'll put an article out and you'll get a comment and you're like, oh my God, I never thought of it from that perspective. Like that's so interesting, especially in like such a niche space where there's like all these interacting like tax provisions. You're like, oh my God, I never even knew, this law was a thing. So it's always like, a learning experience, I think, for us, especially like in the daily, news grind. But yeah, it's huge. Lots of lessons learned there.
Yeah, and I think also like you have learned a lot of lessons there too, because you like write on Accounting Times a lot. Like for anyone that doesn't know, Emma's got a degree in economics and she's so smart and so good at like, that big macroeconomic angle and the international angle. And so she's like, you've probably learned a lot from that too.
Heaps.
And like meeting really interesting people in that space too. What's that been like for you?
It's been awesome actually. I mean, I think it's always great to be able to come into work every day knowing I can just like see something interesting and then like contact the person behind like an interesting, research piece or article or perspective, and like I can just talk to them and get their thoughts on it. And that's always like so rewarding and such like a good learning experience. But especially I think coming from, I guess, a bigger picture economic background, learning about all of these like intricate tax concepts has been, I guess, quite eye-opening in terms of, how these policies actually operate on the ground in practice. Because it's like, obviously you have all these lofty economic goals and ideas, but then I guess really getting to the nitty-gritty of how it plays out on like a business level, which is like where the accountants come into play. I think that's been a huge learning experience for me and always like very, very interesting to learn about. I think it's going to inform my perspective for years to come. So yeah, it's been really awesome in that way.
And so impressive as well, because Emma can get into these really nitty-gritty topics and then she can relate it to so many like bigger topics and bigger impacts. And she does that really easily and can see that link and is able to talk to the right people. And that's something I really admire about Emma, is that she...
Thank you.
No, I do. She really delves into these nitty-gritty topics, but she's got such an understanding of the broader scope and how all of these little things, kind of tick over and then make the bigger things happen. And I think that's why Emma is, just an amazing journalist and an amazing journalist in this space. Sorry, guys, I love Emma. I love my colleague. No, but seriously, it's been like super impressive to watch you make those connections, and I really, really admire that about you.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I find, I guess from the other side, I always see the way you like relate the stories to like the humanistic angle and really like find all these really fun people to make these topics interesting and accessible. Like, it's always like great to see that. So, oh my God, guys,
we're getting a little bit emotional.
Can you tell this is Imogen's second last day? Like, oh my God, this is so sad.
Yeah, do you know what is so interesting too is that AccountantsDaily and Accounting Times is us two.
Yeah,
we're just two little girls.
Yeah, just writing about accounting,
and we don't disclose how old we are. Yeah. A lot of people, I will always say on the podcast, I always say, oh yeah, because I'm, just forever years old, and they're like, how old are you actually? Don't ask me.
It's top secret.
It's top secret, and we will never disclose how old we are.
You'll never know. You'll never know unless you stalk me on LinkedIn, in which case you might know. But we're just we're just experts on accounting. What can I say? I guess let's talk about the subject matter that we report on a little bit. We see a lot of recurring themes in our accounting news bulletins and our, I guess, chats with industry. So I wanted to ask you, what's been your favorite topic of all time to cover in this space?
I think I love covering stuff from the TPB and the bannings and, tax evasion and things like that, tax fraud, things from the ATO. That's really interesting because you can't get away with stuff like that. And I think that there's people in this industry who are trying to get away with stuff like that, or even, just people who are trying to evade their tax. I think that is so interesting, and that is my favorite topic. One, because it's crime. And I love crime reporting. And two, because it's just a little bit more diverse in terms of the people involved, the penalties they get, the decisions. It's always really exciting when something comes like that. Obviously, we talk about tax reform a lot. I actually do like talking about tax reform. And I think that's because a lot of people have a lot to say about it. So that's always a really juicy topic I love delving into. I know it's controversial. I love talking about the reform of CGT.
Yeah.
I know a lot of our readers are really against it. And I know a lot of specialists are kind of open to it so that there will be something a little bit more interesting in the budget to talk about. But I love that that's a really contentious point that people have, like people with real skin in the game all have differing opinions on. I find that really interesting. Obviously, we talk about Div 296 a lot. We obviously spoke about the PwC scandal quite a lot when I first started AD, which of course was super interesting. So they're probably my favourite topics to talk about. I love talking about small businesses as well. And I love hearing people's small business angles and their stories and how they create that. Like Emma said before, I really like the humanistic part of that. What I really don't like and what I really find tough, again, I even though I do like talking about Div 296, once you get into Div 296, it's a lot. And I really dislike family trusts.
Oh my God, girl, same. I don't even, like, what the hell is Section 99B? I still do not understand.
Don't understand. Still
Someone
really
help,
struggle with
please.
that. I spend hours at my desk going through paperwork trying to understand. And I know a lot of people will be listening to this being like, what? Of course, well, this is what happens. But I know, like, obviously we speak to so many people. That's obviously really frustrating, that topic. Div 7A, super tough, really hard to digest. And I think that's probably the ones I really dislike. When something's going on about that, I'm like, oh my God.
You just sit down and you're like, oh, it's like it just takes so much mental energy, I guess,
It
to
really
understand
does.
and like report on it accurately.
Yeah, exactly. And also when, more developments come on the Bendel case, I'm like, oh my God. We're still
You're
going.
Like, see ya.
We're still going on this, but no, it's all so interesting. And I think what is so funny is that, as a journalist, you usually talk about in current affairs, you talk about so many different things. You're a jack of all trades, master of none, right? And the fact that we are now such a niche area where all we talk about is accounting all day, every day for multiple stories and multiple podcasts and multiple conversations, is that we're trying to be a master of a trade, but it's hard. And I think also that's such a satisfactory thing as well, is when you suddenly break through and you understand things and you can talk to the right people and really portray something that's really difficult and complex, but you're doing it in a way that is going to help people reading it. Love that. Love that.
Awesome. I think the big advantage that we have is because it is such a niche area that we're reporting in. Like, obviously there's like a lot of diversity within the space as well, but because we're reporting on a lot of these recurring things like Div 296, like tax reform, all the niche trust taxation stuff. I think it sort of, allows us to report more deeply, and I guess gives us more comfort in like the accuracy of those things. Of like, and also you'll talk to people and be like, oh yeah, the media is always like getting this wrong, and you can be like, yes, like we can get this little niche thing right, and like I guess there's sort of like satisfaction in that of being, able to explain these more complex issues and like I guess the background, like even something like CGT. Like before I started this role, I didn't know why the CGT was put into place. Like I was like, oh, it's like sort of a tax break for rich investors, whatever. But just to learn the backstory and like what policy it was replacing and, how we can think about it in like a more holistic way has been like a very interesting, I guess, experience. But yeah, it's huge. Love this little niche. It's very interesting. And I guess you working in the space for like the past 2 years, you'd have like an interesting perspective on this. But what advice would you give to someone who wants to create thoughtful journalism in like a really niche sector like accounting?
Do you know what? I was thinking about this morning, and I was thinking back to what I did in this space, because I came in with no finance or accounting experience. I was terrible at maths at school. Hence why I'm a journalist. But I think you just have to be really open-minded that it's going to be hard, and that you have to just kind of really throw yourself into it and really apply yourself and just be willing to learn and willing to get things wrong and willing to be a work in progress. And it doesn't make you a bad journalist. I feel like it would make you a good journalist because you are striving to be better for your audience. And I'll say it again, it's not about us, it's about them. And it's about the people we're talking about. So I think if you just have that in your mind and you are throwing yourself and, trying to upskill the whole time and being really willing and open and positive about it, you will get to a place where you feel like you are, you've got skin in the game, which is really nice. Would I say I've got skin in the game now? No, absolutely not. And it's still really hard. But every day I walk into work being willing to learn, willing to talk to new people, and willing to understand that it's going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it. So if any like journalist or anyone was going into a new industry, it's just one of those things where it's like, just apply yourself. I had John Munden in here the other day and he said something really cool. He said, just be curious. And I think that's a really, really great point. Could apply to so many things in life. Just be curious, be open-minded, be positive, because so much more happens when you are open to receiving so many different aspects of feedback, criticism, knowledge, friendships, partnerships. Everything good happens when you're open and positive. So I would definitely say that. Just be willing.
Yeah, that's just such a nice sentiment as well. I think, especially in journalism, it always pays to be a little bit curious. And, you never know where a story is going to lead you or where a particular, I guess, niche is going to lead you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's awesome. And I guess, working in this space for the past 2 years, do you think there are any perspectives that you're going to take forward with you in your future career or future life that you've learned from the accounting industry?
Yeah, I think not listening to stigma and stereotypes. I think, like sometimes we look at lawyers and go, oh, what people, or, they can be, or, what scary people, or, we would look at accountants and be like, oh, what boring people, what number crunchers. And now that I'm in this industry, I'm like, that's so not true. And so I think I'll definitely be taking that forward into my new roles, is that just having time and space for people to show you who they are rather than you telling them who they are. I think that can be really hard, especially also I'll say that about journalists as well. Everyone hates journalists. Everyone hates journalists, and like rightly so. There's that stereo and stigma that exists, and I always do say stereotypes exist for a reason, because there are some people or some societal barriers that box people in. But just let people show you who they are. Don't tell them. Don't let them, be boxed into something that society said they have to be. So I think as a journalist as well, moving forward into other roles, I'm going to be so open-minded to every profession, every person, opening up and showing me and telling me their story rather than me having assumptions.
Yeah, I think, it's awesome skill to have. And there's always like unexpected knowledge you can find and like interesting people that'll pop up from the most unexpected places.
Definitely.
And what do you think you're going to miss the most about this little accounting journey and the podcast and all of that?
Oh, the people. Yeah. My colleagues, Emma.
Yeah.
No, definitely. And in this industry, the people I've met, such a great group of friends, of women who are so supportive of each other and doing such fantastic things. I know a lot of people listening in would know who I'm talking about. There is such a beautiful group of women. I've made some really good connections in this industry and people that I will forever go to and talk to, I think. I think that's what I'll miss the most. And, having the ability to create this safe space on the podcast and this fun space for people to open up, I'll really miss that too.
Yeah, that's so huge. You've had some really, really, I think, impactful and very interesting conversations. But I guess as we wrap up, is there anything that you'd like to say to the audience? This final ep here, it's your last few days. Like, what do you want to say?
Oh, I just want to say thank you to everyone that has listened to the podcast. I want to thank everyone that has been kind. I want to thank everyone who has helped me upskill, shared their knowledge, extended an olive branch, invited me to events. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your loyalty. Thank you for supporting me and backing me when obviously I've had a couple of haters there. But seriously, the people, my friendships I've made mean so much to me, and I will carry them forward for the rest of my life. And there'll be, people I hold close to me for a long time and people who I always trust. So thank you for that. Thank you for giving me this platform to make this podcast possible. Thank you for listening to the episodes. It's been such a great period of growth, and I'm really excited for, Emma to take the reins and, explore a little bit what this podcast is like and what it's about and how you can, grow as a journalist and a person, and as someone who isn't an accountant but is kind of an accountant.
We should be accountants by the end of this.
Yeah, but thank you so much for just the support. It means the world to me. I really appreciate it. And my next steps in my career wouldn't be possible without all of you supporting this podcast. So usually I say bye for now, but I guess I'll be saying over and out.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.